This episode of Around the Layout is brought to you by Spring Creek Model Trains. Family owned for nearly 25 years, Spring Creek is your destination for model trains. Check out springcreekmodeltrains.com for a wide variety of offerings from today's top manufacturers and exclusive products found nowhere else. Whether in Deschler, Nebraska, or at a train show near you, stop in and say wow. To see where they'll be next, visit their website at springcreekmodeltrains.com. Tully Models is hitting the road. Come see their growing line of industry and mill modeling details from Industrial Modeler Supply and Southern Tier Grain Modeler Supply, July 19th and 20th at the National Train Show at the 2025 NMRA National Convention in Novi, Michigan. Then it's off to the St. Louis RPM, July 24th through 26th at the Gateway Center in Collinsville, Illinois. Stop by and find out how Tully Models can take your layout industries to the next level. For more, check out their website at tullymodels.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott, so glad you could join us. It's time once again for Talking Ops with Don Irace, and back in the ATLP studio, Mr. Don Irace. Don, welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another month of Ops.
Yeah, you're back up here in New England.
I've been spending a lot of time up here lately.
You escaping the heat from Florida?
It's just the way it worked out. I mean, it's not like it wasn't planned. This is all planned stuff. It's just the way it happens. I mean, except for my dad got sick there for a little bit. I came up the first time, but this was a planned trip. So
yeah,
here we are.
Well, it's good to have you up here. Your layout must miss you, and I'm sure you miss it too.
I have to go home and reintroduce myself to the layout. Remember me?
Yeah.
I used to be here one time. I was only home like 3.5 weeks. Not even 4 weeks. I was back in the car and we drove up this time. So
how many times did you get to operate it when you were back down in Florida? Once.
We operated on mine once, and we operated on our guests once.
Oh, we have a guest here. Yeah. So and I think it's just works well so that you can see each other because you haven't been seeing each other lately. Right. Welcome to the studio, John Farrington. John, good to see you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Hey John, good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Do you miss him?
Yeah, it's just feels a little different without Don down the street.
If it wasn't for the trees, I could just go right down the street, right to his house. That's how
I could probably drive a golf ball to your front door.
You ought to try it someday. Let's see if you can do it.
Yeah. Call that Paul Planning on the city of Sebastian's roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you guys are nice and close. In fact, I found that out in my little, 24-hour visit to Florida back in February. And got to come over your place at, I don't know, it was like 10:30 at night. And we chatted for probably a solid hour and led me back to the hotel room at 1:00. But it was worth it because I got to see your layout. Remind me, it's like Somerset and Raritan, right? Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We've had you on the podcast. We talked about your layout. And then it was funny because I was driving through Jersey about a few months ago. And I saw Ferrero Foods, which is on your layout. And I said, hey, I'm on your layout. There it is. It's right there. So it was kind of a cool opportunity.
It didn't start out that way, though. It started off as rail serve, right? And then then you changed it,
Yeah. It's funny. The Ferrero Foods. I actually, weirdly enough, today going to get some coffee, and I saw a Ferrero Foods truck delivering food at the pizza place by the river. I forget which one that is, but I had to stop and take a picture of it. So it's pretty cool. I don't know what they're doing down here, but
they're chasing you. They're coming to find their former New Jersey resident down there in Florida.
They're starting to bring some of that good old Italian food down to Florida.
Let's hope.
So for those that didn't catch, and we're going to share a link on our website, aroundthelayout.com/166, back to your first episode. Why don't you just give us a little bit of a summary of what you're modeling now in the space that you're doing it in?
I'm going freelance, or I model freelance. It's the Somerset and Raritan. It's based on a few industries in, the Somerset area, which is kind of like central New Jersey, if you could say that. Yeah, it started out as becoming or going into a version 2 of my first layout, the RailServe layout. Started that. It just kept growing and growing, and it just didn't really make sense to have RailServe do it anymore, because RailServe is more of a single industry operation. So yeah, I decided to switch over to the freelance world.
So tell us about the area that that you have the layout in.
So I'm in 2 bedrooms in the house. So it's 2 rooms divided by or with a closet, 2 closets. So it's kind of like around 3 walls through a double closet, and then again around 3 walls. Actually, kind of 4 walls now in the other room, because I kind of
Extended out into the hallway.
into the hallway. Yeah, it's growing, but it's an organic growth.
It's about 5 feet short of being connected to each other.
I probably could connect it to each other. Yeah, so it works out. We built this house a few years ago, and it was much larger than we needed, but that's okay, because I needed to build a railroad because I didn't have a basement. And yeah, my wife was gracious enough to give me the back 2 rooms, and that's where the layout lives.
Beautiful layout too.
Oh,
Yeah, so
thank you.
so Don, yeah, you get to operate there on a fairly regular basis when you're back home.
Yeah, I mean, we operate whenever his schedule allows it. You know what I mean? We try to take turns. We really just have 2 layouts now that we can really operate on. Then we're waiting for Jeff to get going with his.
Mm-hmm.
He's up in Merritt Island, so there'll be 3 of us up there. Then we got another guy in Vero. He's trying to do something, but it's in N scale, which, it doesn't matter. N scale, HO scale, it is what it is. But, yeah, I've been operating on John's now, a couple of years?
Yeah, I think we've been in the house for a little over 3 years, and started pretty quickly on construction. So yeah, it's I always joke with Don. I wish I kind of had the space for a large shed or something, but it is what it is. We're having fun with it. So
It works good. I mean, it works fine the way it is. I mean, it's got the 2 rooms. It's pretty equivalent to mine, about my space. And, if he wanted to, and we've talked about this before, going over, but now it looks like he's going to go under a little bit, but it's, it is what it is. He's got plenty of room to do either, you know, but right now it really works like fine, just the way it is. I mean, the yard that's where I am. I'm the yard master. So I have my fun in there. It's got better and better, and it's busy. You know, in the beginning, it wasn't as busy, but now it's really busy. It's like you basically don't even have time to breathe right now.
Well, one of the impressions I had when I got to see it, one is you're a phenomenal modeler, and then the scenery is really fantastic, and the detail work that you're doing. But what also caught my attention was that it is a smaller layout. And this really goes back to the episode that Don and I did with Tom Klimoski, where we were talking about smaller layouts and the big opportunities. And yours is that idea in action, which is really cool. And the things that you've done to extend out your operating. So I'm looking forward to diving into that with you.
Sure.
Talk about how you first started to involve operations into the plan as you were building this layout.
Initially, when I first started building the layout, in my head, I was still in the mentality of kind of like how my old layout was, just 1 or 2 guys or operators just moving cars around. But the more and more I operated with Don over at his layout, I really got hooked on the kind of the camaraderie and the fun of having people over and building the op session to accommodate more than just a couple people. So I don't want to say I was pressured, but myself, not by Don, but I was pressured by myself, because I wanted to continue that. Like, I wanted to be able to have the same guys, the same operators that we operate at Don's to come over to mine. Like, I didn't want to have to say like, oh, I can only have, 2 or 3 people. I wanted to be able to say, yeah, we could take 4 or 5, whoever is operating, and come on over to mine next week or whatever. So that's been the struggle with the layout and the few expansions that I've done is I'm trying to add some things that add to the operation or to the op session, but not overwhelm the operator and make it just cram everything into the space. So we're adding a few things. We added a, like Todd said, kind of into the hallway. I made like a removable section that it's probably 3 or 4 feet. It just hooks onto the end of the layout, and there's a little temporary staging yard that goes into the hallway. But you could still walk between the two rooms, okay, and you could still leave the layout area. But it's just 3 tracks, a little mini yard, but it just added a huge element to a couple jobs that, for one operator, Dick, that operates, he's one of the most, like, I don't know, what do you think, Don? Like the efficient
Oh
car
yeah,
mover.
he makes him.
He's
Yeah, he's just unbelievable how efficient he is in moving cars around.
it's really cool to watch him work, and I always joke that I'm going to start recording him with a GoPro and like time lapse every job, because you can learn a lot from him. But he worked the new job with this new addition of just, it really didn't add to the industry, but it just gave room to work. So room to sort, room to put cars, and I don't know, it probably took him an hour, and he said he loved it. He said it just completely transformed the job. So stuff like that I'm trying to do just to help with the session, which then could accommodate, more people.
I think that pressure to reciprocate, I know personally, you want to be able to do that when you go to other operating sessions. For me, the Mark Herrick's, and at the time Tony Donatelli's and Mike King, and those that were operating, around here, I wanted to be one of those guys too. And I'm sure after going to the infamous shed over on the other side of the trees, you probably felt that pressure as well. I think that's what you're kind of leaning at.
Yeah, it was more internal. I mean, it's just, I wanted to, I really enjoy working with everybody, and I just want to be able to have have the same group over to my place. So that's what we've been doing. Yeah, and I think a couple more little tweaks we're going to do, a couple more little tasteful additions, and we'll be able to accommodate those, 4 operators just for 2 to 3 hours on an evening during the week. And I think that'll work.
Yeah, it worked out good because even that little extension he built worked out great because he's got 2 jobs working out there. And the one where the extension is able to stay in that area now, instead of tying up and getting in the way of the job in front of him that's closer to the yard. So that kind of freed all that up, and they're not on the road as much, blocking the crossing. And
yeah,
it just worked out good. It just kept everything for that. That's a bulk transfer over there, right? The transload area, and kind of kept that over there, and that one guy. So, and they're not on top of each other, so, I mean, but 4 guys is pretty comfortable.
Yeah. How do you try to set those limits? Because it's got to be hard to do. I know it was a little hard for me. I've got a much smaller space to set those limits, because you want to invite everybody and their brother over, but you can't. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I've both of Don's and my layout are things are kind of slow paced, which does help extend the op session, and in my opinion makes it a little bit more enjoyable. There's no time constraints. We just get it done. Doesn't matter how long it takes you. But with that, it also leaves it open to, I have a lot of rooms. Since we don't have peninsulas, it's basically the center of the rooms are open, so we can accommodate a job to have an engineer and a conductor. You can add that. I know a lot of guys want to work by themselves, but if we have an extra person, sometimes they'll even say like, "Hey, if you don't mind, we'll kind of have a little bit more than normal. But if you wouldn't mind being a conductor or an engineer and be on a 2-man crew, I'd love to have you over." And most of the time people will accept that just to be able to operate.
We can, man, even in the yard,
Yeah.
you could have 2 guys in that. And there's during the op session in the yard is basically just me. John will be walking back and forth, but for the most part, everybody else is in the other room. So you can technically really have an engineer and a conductor in the yard working in there if we had to. you know, if we wanted to. And I wouldn't have a problem with somebody else in there at all. You know,
Yeah, well, we did it with your father when your father was
right. Exactly. Yeah, my father was there. He was the engineer, and I was the conductor. And when he wanted to rest, he had a chair there to sit down on, and he could still use my proto throttle, and he could still operate the train and everything. But it was fun. He had a good time, and I know he's looking forward to getting back there again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like the conductor engineer at times. I mean, there's certain, a neat camaraderie and fun with it, especially if you get the right guy and you can, get the chatter, get the banter, kind of emulate what you hear on the railroad, the conversations between conductor and engineer. And especially if your engineer doesn't like completely pay attention to what you're doing and you can have to communicate with them. I think that's a lot of fun to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Depends on like the way he's got his setup. It's open space. So there's, like I said, there's nothing blocking the way. It's easy to have 2-man crews. My layout, there's probably a couple of jobs you can do 2-man crews, but like the paper mill, you couldn't have 2-man crews because there's just too many people over there. You got the yard master, you got the guy working the paper mill, but on his layout is a little different, and he could probably use 2-man crews pretty much on all his jobs.
Well, that's good. And, I think that's something you have to think of if you want to do those things. And this is something that Don and I have talked about on quite a few past shows. You've got to plan for that aisle space.
It's tough. Yeah. I think aisle space, and I mean, we may have talked about this last time, but you kind of lose sight on how much space it really takes to switch a job. The train moving back and forth, having lead space for your, you don't want to just have, there are some facilities where, they're going to be tight quarters, but on the main line, you kind of want to be able to have some space for your train. So, that's kind of what I added with that little extension. It's not really adding an industry, but I've added room to move around, and it adds a lot, I think.
So let's get into the operations of the layout. Let's start off with the jobs you do.
Sure. So we've got, as of now, we've got 4 main jobs. We're kind of coming up with some things for one industry, which we'll probably talk about later. So we've got 4 jobs, and we've got some interchange action. So 4 jobs, SR1 through 4. SR1 is the transload, which is it's actually modeled after a real facility. I think we talked about this again on the previous show, but it's a dry bulk transfer facility, and there's a lot of cars there. I can only model a small portion of it, but that job is basically shuffling cars. You're just shuffling those pressure hoppers, those boring gray pressure hoppers. But it takes a long time. I mean, I've got two tracks that fit about 5 or 6 cars a piece. Actually, I think 6. And then I have kind of like an off spot staging there where more cars are stored. So when you get there, you have to kind of see what cars are being pulled, see what cars need to come out of the staging onto the transload, which cars are going to go back over to the staging area. So it's a lot of shuffling, and that's an opportunity again for having 2 crew members.
Right, and it takes time.
It takes time, but it's fun. I did it the last op session we did. I ran that job, and it was fun. I just, you got to plan your moves. You got room to work, but not too much room where it's, kind of like a freebie. So you kind of have to think a little bit. But yeah, that seems to be kind of like a favorite job. I know Tom Klimoski really likes that job when he came by. SR2 is more of a kind of a traditional local where you kind of service a few different industries kind of in the same location. And I kind of planned it where this is SR2 is actually working on the opposite side of the layout as SR1. So you have room, you could basically not interact with each other, but you're still in the same space. But that's fun too, because you got a lot of spotting, a lot of shuffling, a few different industries.
Just so everybody knows, I can say this because I've done this, that when you get there at the beginning of the station, SR1 and SR2 are already staged and ready to go out of the yard. And once they leave the yard, then the yard master is responsible for building SR3 and SR4 out of the cars on the NS interchange and the cars on the CSX interchange, which are in the same room only on the opposite wall of the yard master. So I just so everybody knows how these trains start.
Yeah, so we have the two interchanges, which it's kind of neat having two because it does add a little bit more of a dynamic to the yard job, having to sort the cars out and in. So the NS interchange is actually, it's always there. Like when you start the session, the huge line of cars is there, and the
Huge.
yard. Yeah, well, I don't know how many cars it is, but
A whole wall and a half, pretty
yeah, a
much.
wall and a half. And then you do have a little bit left over from CSX from the previous session. And then somewhere in the second half of the session, the CSX will actually come into the layout and then drop off and swap out and go back out. So that's kind of a newer thing that we're trying. And it seems to be working okay.
Well, my favorite part of that is the CSX yard, actually, because it's a little bit of a downgrade. So
Yeah.
you can actually push cars in, offset the couplers, and push cars around the corner of the yard, and just let them kick the car down into the yard. You know, it's just fun. You know, it's just something different. You know what I mean? But I just find it that I mean, it was probably an accident too that it even happened like that, because originally that area wasn't even for a yard. It was it was for gravel. A stone or something over there.
Yeah, it was originally the company Transload. So it was a couple tracks, like Don's saying, on the opposite side of the yard. And once we started, running the CSX interchange, I kind of needed space for that. So the Transload moved to a more permanent location in the other room, which I don't think I've even shared photos of that. I've done a lot. I just haven't. I've been kind of slacking with posts and stuff, but I built a whole new section for that Transload, and now it's its own job, SR4, and that's just strictly a transload job. So you've got 3 tracks. It's a railroad owned transload. So we've got the salt delivery, some plywood, corn syrup. It could be whatever, which is kind of fun because you could, kind of throw whatever you want in there for random loads coming in or out.
That's not the only thing on that new edition either, because you got something behind there too.
That's
all about that.
Yeah. The hidden CSX interchange is actually behind the backdrop of that new transload area. So it's kind of in the closet. It's kind of neat. So the CSX it kind of pokes out. You don't even know it's back there. It's in there. We have this new interlocking in the closet area, and the CSX could come onto the main and into the yard. And when it goes back into that hidden section behind
like hidden
behind the
staging,
fascia.
basically.
Yeah, it works out pretty well.
But it works out great, But that might be changing again soon too.
Yeah, for the better.
He's a bad influence, isn't he, John?
This wasn't my idea. This is his idea.
Yeah, but again, it's all these little changes have been, like I said, just it's adding to the operation, but not overcrowding everything. It's like, so I added this interchange train that could come in, but that's another job that somebody could do. So now, instead of the 3 standard operators, the yard guy and whoever else is doing the 2 main jobs, now we could have this 4th operator doing these smaller odd jobs like the interchange. Like the new, which we'll get into later, the coil facility is probably going to have its own dedicated switcher now to move coils around, because I've added some things to that facility where you need a little bit more time and attention there, and it kind of warrants its own locomotive and its own operator. So again, that it adds to it, although I'm not really adding an industry, but now we're adding an opportunity for someone else to do a job.
So like SR1 and 2 go out and begin the session.
Mm-hmm.
Then as they come back, then SR3 and SR4 will go out in their place, because they're not all out there at the same time.
Correct.
Of course, that all depends on how many operators you got too. If you had if you had 4 operators, you could put a guy in SR1, SR2, but you can't do SR3 and 4 yet anyway, because they're not built yet. They have to.
Yeah, they have to
be built.
But while they're being built, we could now kind of do some movement for SR3 is the coil job, which is it works a coil facility where they take in coils and they build like construction materials and aluminum 2x4s and stuff like that. For it's a fairly large operation. They take a lot of coil cars, so a lot of shuffling over there, and that was usually done on SR3. But now, like I said, we're going to start kind of playing with its own little switcher in the facility, moving the cars around.
Yeah, talk about that facility in particular, because I believe that's the one where the idea of slowing things down and adding some elements that extend the operating session really come into play. Talk about that.
Yeah. So originally I built it based on, I looked at pictures. I remember when I was younger living up in that area, I would see the coil cars going out and I knew where they went. And I didn't really understand how it worked over there. I never really watched them switch that facility. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, it's such a big building. They probably take, 4, 5, 6 cars at a time, unload them, and that's that. Until I met Ralph Heiss, and he knew all about that industry. And he goes, no, he goes, they actually unload 2 at a time, and the crew will drop 2 cars in the facility, and they'll wait 30, 40 minutes, and then they'll pull those 2, bring the next 2, do the same thing, and they'll do that for a little while, and then leave. All while having, a big, overflow of coils in the area on some storage tracks. So I'm like, okay, so let's do something like this. Let's, instead of filling that building, which could handle 4 or 5 cars on my railroad, I cut it to 2. And now you'll have, as part of your instructions, you'll have a list of cars that are going to get switched during the session, and the other cars are going to get put into, off spot staging. But I kind of made my own little twist and said, okay, let's have a list of the 6 cars in pairs of 2. And so there'll be 3 unload, sessions during your little, during while you're running the job. And instead of waiting 45 minutes to 30 minutes, I made it so let's do 5 minutes. And I found this, a digital timer, and it's basically, I have a button on the fascia. You spot the 2 cars, you press the button, a little blue light flashes on the fascia, and on the facility itself, I have some strobe lights simulating as if a crane is being used in the facility, and that'll flash for 5 minutes. And once it's done flashing, you could come in now, pull the 2 cars, and then bring the next pair in, and do that 3 times. So that really adds to the job instead of just dropping 6 cars and leaving.
Isn't it great when prototype railroads start doing model railroad like things? And, you start to see that, or you start to get that inside baseball like you got from Ralph Heiss that really starts to make the change. And although you're doing freelance, it brings it closer to the prototype.
Yeah. I told him, I said, man, if I would have known the information that, like back when I was building this railroad, I probably would have maybe modeled Conrail shared assets, because I loved the area, obviously, since I'm modeling it, but in a freelance. But I just didn't know all these details that would drive me nuts trying to replicate something, a real railroad, but not knowing all the details. So I said, I just got to do my own, which I'm glad I do the freelance. I really enjoy it, but it's now causing me to kind of go back to some of these industries that I've built and kind of have the prototypical twist to it, which is fun. I mean, it seems to work. It definitely slows down that job.
It's always nice to know people that are around that know what's going on in that area to look to, you know what I mean, to do stuff like that. So that was a big thing, because that job is really fun now, waiting to, to spot those cars and pull cars out. Just prolongs the op session,
I think the takeaway from all of that is, don't be afraid to be a little nosy or ask questions too.
Exactly.
And throw it out there, because folks are probably just like you, desiring all that inside baseball information that we just crave. And again, when you get that, holy moly, it just completely changes your entire look on how you operate your layout.
Yeah, definitely.
It does a good job. All these little subtle changes he's made is really, if we start at 7:00, outside one night, I didn't get home till like 10:15.
Yeah.
But and you're busy the whole night. That's the whole thing. It's like, you're not sitting around waiting for trains to come in. It's like, sometimes I'm not ready for the trains, and they're stacking up on the outside over there waiting to come in,
Yeah.
But it's fun because it's always busy. It's no sitting around at all, and it's gotten better because in the beginning there was a lot of sitting around waiting, especially in the yard area. The changes he's made it's made it better right across the whole layout.
What do you think your biggest change to get towards that is, Ben?
We did the big addition into adding the yard. Once I added the yard, that just completely kind of ignited the whole op session, because originally it was all based around an interchange track. And then the kind of one or two trains were built off of that. But now that we have the yard, and it's a small yard, it's only 3 tracks. It could probably hold, I don't know, each track could probably hold 10 cars, 10, 12 cars. But it's just enough where it's not so big where it's super easy, but now it's small enough where you still could sort stuff, plan stuff. But yeah, once I built the yard, it just ignited it from there.
Let me ask the yard master himself over here. Does the smaller yard actually make it a little more challenging?
Yeah, because the way the track configuration is, there's 2 tracks. There's a track against the wall. There's next track in, and they come off one line off the main. He's got it's almost like 2 tracks coming from the first signal out. There's 2 tracks there, and there's the double crossover, which we'll talk about that double crossover too. That thing is important, and so those 2 tracks are controlled by one track. Then in order to get the next track in, you've got to pull clear of that onto the crossover, and then back in again. So it's a little bit challenging, but I like it because it's not just like shove a car, because nothing comes in is blocked up. So you got to sort everything, and I try to build the trains so when the guys go out on the jobs, the cars that are going to the locations are pretty next to each other, so they don't have to spend a lot of time out there sorting and moving and shuffling stuff around to get the cars they want. But it works good, and it's nice and fluid. The NS interchange is not a facing point to the yard, so you can only pull 8, 10 cars out of that yard, out of that track at once.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got enough room to run around them, and then you start shoving into the yard. Then you pull another cut out, and then you run around the whole thing again, and then you start shoving all that into the yard. But it's twice as busy as it was before. There's hands down. It's busy all night long. You're fluttering through all the different switch lists and everything to make sure you got all the cars in the right place. I got my favorite engine I use. That's the only engine I use. But then you got a plan for the trains when they're coming back, because where the switching engine, the yard engine is going to be when the train's coming in, depending on where it's going. Some of it might be going to the NS interchange again, because not all the cars that come back go in the yard. Some do. Some go back into the interchange. So you got to be on the right side, because if your engine's not where it's supposed to be, now you got a problem. So it takes a lot of planning out in front to see who's coming back, what has he got. Now I know after all this time where these cars are going when they come back. So in the beginning it was a little tough because you had to really go by the switch list. But now I can I know where they're going over there. These guys are going over there. But it's very, very challenging. And if you put a new guy in there to want to do yard work, it would take a little while for him to get his act on, because it can be very confusing, but it's fun. It's fun for me.
So John, what Don's describing and how he's describing this entire yard job, is this what you had in mind when you were making these changes? Is this a plan that's come to fruition for you?
Yeah. So it's good to hear him say that, because I wanted it to be, I want the yard job to be you should be kind of experienced on the layout to run it, because although every car, I use switch lists. I make my own switch lists. They're pretty basic, but when I do the cars, so when the jobs come back into the yard, the very end of the switch list that the guy, so like SR1 comes back, and it has a list of cars that he's bringing back to the yard. Well, the very end, I made it so he could hand the end of his switch list to the yard job, and it'll basically tell the yard job where all those cars are going, NS or CSX or back into the yard. So it's pretty simple in terms if you were just, to look at your paperwork, you'd be able to figure it out. But again, that's just an extra step to kind of have to plan and see where those cars are on the train and plan which track they're going to. Is it a trailing point? Is it a facing point? So it does take a little bit of planning, but that's part of the fun of it. I wanted it to, I don't want someone just sitting here, just, train going back and forth and just pushing cars around. I really wanted them to think. So that's good to hear him say that.
It is good. And I like that because to me, I'm a troubleshooter at heart, and to try to negotiate that whole yard job is very interesting to me. I enjoy it, and I pretty much do it all the time. None of the other guys have even attempted to work in the yard. That I don't think they have. When I wasn't there.
No, we need to.
You did.
Yeah, I've done it, but we'll get them doing it. It's it's
fun.
You say the biggest change, adding the yard, but along with that is you kind of really underestimate the amount of cars you need for a session to kind of roll into each session. Like, it's one thing if your op session runs and then you finish and then you basically have to restage everything. But mine is where it'll roll into the next session. So you almost need like triple the amount of cars per industry, because not only are there cars in the industry, but there's cars maybe in the yard already that are coming in on this session. But then also there's cars that are hiding in the closet on the interchange that will be coming in later. So it's like this, rotation of cars that I just completely underestimate. I remember telling Don, like, I need more I need more hoppers. I need more cars. Like, I didn't think I'd need this, but I need a lot more cars.
In the beginning, when it was first operating, it was like we just didn't have enough cars.
It's crazy.
It was nothing. There's like the sessions were going by snap because he just didn't have enough cars. Not that he didn't have them, he just to get them. You know what I mean? Just to buy the cars he was looking for. But now he has a good set of cars now, and there's plenty there.
How'd you solve that? Because I know for me, I remember talking about sitting on the stairs and staring at my layout. Like in my head, I'm like, okay, so this industry is being served by NECR. So the boxcar is this, then there's going to have to be some sitting here. And then obviously talk about that process for you and getting that whole situation resolved.
Well, first off, it's good to hear that I'm not the only one that will stare at my layout, because sometimes I'll get up in the middle of the night and just walk over here and stare. My wife, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you planning now? Because I'll have an idea and I have to just visualize, just look at the layout and plan out the moves. But no, it took me actually running the jobs. Like, I ran the session and I immediately would see, like, okay, so the interchange that's coming in, that's going to build SR1 and 2, that needs to be done the second half of the session, because now when we restart the next, on the next operating day, those trains need to be built. So you can't just be taking cars that are coming off the industry and then say, okay, they're not only coming back from industry, but now they're right onto the interchange track, and go ahead and build them again on the new SR1 and 2. It's like, so you need an extra set.
Right.
So yeah. I would see these big empty spaces. I'd be like, well, why is the outbound interchange so empty, but the inbound is so full? Like, well, yeah, because you need more cars. You just, it's just crazy. I didn't think of that. I've never had to think of that until I built this larger layout.
It worked, but it works. I mean, now that you have all the cars you need, I think it's fantastic the way that whole situation works. It's a good flow. I don't know. I can't really say enough about it. I mean, it's fun. I mean, that's what it's all about, and it works out really well.
Well, we know Don's favorite job on that layout. What's your favorite job, John?
walking around.
Walking around.
No, it's definitely the Venezia job for sure.
Yeah, tell us about it.
It's the transload. So sorting the cars, planning what's going to staging or the mini yard over there, off spotting, and what's going to into the facility. I like that. I like the thinking. I like the simple back and forth switching. There's once you're in the facility, you don't need to run around. So you're basically always just pulling in and out, moving cars. That's my favorite so far because like I said, we're changing a few things, and I think I may have another favorite in the future.
The last op session you had, you were involved because it was just me, you, and Chip. Because the other thing I'll explain is that this time of year, it's tough. We lose a lot of our guys because they're snowbirds. Vinny goes back. Dick goes back to New Hampshire. This is the last year Dick's going back to New Hampshire. He's moving. When he comes back, he's here all the time. Jeff's been in his new job. He's been all over the place, so he's not around all the time. He's around quite a bit, but sometimes he just misses out, But John really got to dig into his own op session, the last op session we had, because it was just like I said, it was just me, him, and Chip there. So he really got to get involved in his own layout.
So that shifting personnel actually kind of brings up a good point and kind of towards that smaller layout or something that you can do with only 3 people, because that's what you have, right? You know that you're going to lose some people in the summer. So you've got that flexibility, can run it with 3, can operate with 5. So it sounds like that was, that's really worked into it. And it's been a good point to having a layout that you can do that with.
Yeah. I mean, circling back to the beginning, talking about that kind of little anxiety I've had of making sure everybody had something to do. So I would always be the one to sacrifice. Like, I'd rather have all my guests come over and have a job to do, and I'll fill in where it's needed. So adding these few other little things is now allowing, again, the 4th operator, which we only had 3 the other night, which the session went really long because of that. But now we're able to have 4. And then, it allows me to do a little more as well. Cause I do really want to do more, but it's more like, I don't want to invite somebody over and then grab the throttle and say, oh, go sit down and watch, So it's been,
but Don, you're a big proponent of layout owners running their own layouts during op sessions too.
That's right. And then when he's walking around, being the straw boss of the SNR over there, I'm like, why don't you go find a throttle and do something? You know what I mean? Just work with me in the yard. You want to be the engineer? You want to be the conductor? I don't care, because there's plenty of work in that yard for 2 people. Yeah. Absolutely 2 people. So he could always, and I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? Another thing you do too, if you got 2-man crews, 2 guys, one's the engineer, one's the conductor, and then like halfway through the job, you swap, and then the other guy's the engineer. And this way, everybody has a chance to do a little bit of everything rather than just doing that one thing. Because some guys might say, well, I just want to be the engineer and I don't want to be the conductor. Then some guys want to be a conductor and they don't want to be the engineer. But if you force them to do both, you make a very well-rounded operator. And they should be able to do every job. And I'll say it before, layout owners should run all their jobs on their layouts. I can't say that enough. Because I've run into situations where we've gone to op sessions where the op owners never even ran the job that they're trying to make you run. You know what I mean? How do you know what's wrong with that job? You need to do it and figure out if there's problems, fix it. You have to. Every layout owner should be able to run his own jobs on his layout. I'm a firm believer of that.
Okay. So now that Don said that, John, have you run every job on your layout?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good.
I'll even, sometimes if we don't get to operate here, I'll just run the job just by myself, just to switch stuff around. Some people don't like running their layouts by themselves. I kind of enjoy it still. So, I'm often in here just moving cars around sometimes, and that's fun. It's a little bit of a stress reliever for me. So,
which job do you go to if you were to walk in tonight by yourself? What job are you going to head towards?
I'm doing the Transload Venezia job.
He loves that job.
Yeah.
Well, because
I think he just likes the name.
I just like.
So let's talk about that. If you run it right now, are you able to run it and still leave it in a position where you really haven't hurt anything in a cycle for your operating session?
This is the ongoing struggle that I have.
That could, not there. It couldn't, because it would mess everything up.
It wouldn't, because I haven't gotten to the point yet where I have like Don, I think you have 3 cycles and you stick by the 3.
Right.
I don't have that yet. So every time I do a session, I have like a template switch list for all the jobs. And I made it easy in Excel where I could walk around the layout and I could plug in what cars are at what spots on each industry and plug in the cars that are on the interchange. And quickly I could make the switch list. It doesn't take me that long. Maybe it takes me 45 minutes. So I could grab the 6 or 8 pressure hoppers that are in the yard for SR1, go switch out SR1, come back with a new 6 or 8 cars and put them right back. And then when it comes time to do the op session, I'll just plug in how the layout is right now and it'll formulate the new session. So I kind of keep it loose like that because, again, I don't want to be locked in to only moving cars during the op session. But that's just me. I do like to mess around on the layout.
See, I don't do it that way. If I feel like running a job, I'll run the job and then I'll put the cars right back to where they were before I started. Because I got to move everything. I got to move everything from all over the place. You know what I mean? I've got 12 jobs on my layout. I'd have to cycle through the whole 12. And if we operate every week, especially if you're not around because if you're not around, then it's at my house. So somewhere we're running on a Wednesday night somewhere. And I got enough stuff going on that if I mess up one job, then I basically got to cycle through 12 jobs to get everything back to where it's supposed to be. So I'll go to the paper mill, I'll swap out the paper mill, and then I'll come back the next morning and I'll put all the cars that are on the track to go out, and I'll cycle them all right back in where they were. And then everything will be, when I'm done, everything will be just the way it is before I started playing with it. Let's move on to, now you got signals. Stuff. Let's talk about what you did with your signals and your signal system and stuff.
Yeah, so we kind of started with, let's try a couple signals and see how it works. Yeah, right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Don, didn't I start doing the signals and I'm not doing signals, I'm not doing it. And next thing you know,
I got somebody else that can blame for that on my layout.
He's helping me do mine, and next thing you know, signals are going in on his.
Let's stop right there. and what you need to learn, if you haven't learned this already, what you do is when Don says he's not going to do something, you circle that day on the calendar and you write it in. And then when he actually does it, then remind him on this day you said you weren't going to do it. So, but yeah, tell us how this whole thing about adding signals to your layout.
Yeah. So initially it was just to govern some movement between the 2 rooms and in the center of the single track through the closet. So a few blocks, that's about it. And then we quickly learned, let's go ahead and kind of put CATs and JMRI into it, which, doesn't cost anything. So it's been growing slowly, which is fun. I enjoy that part of the hobby though, the kind of the technology part, the signaling, the fact that we could have a remote operator or a remote dispatcher. We've done that now a couple times. We have it hooked up to the computer and so on. But yeah, it's added another element, just like all the other things. But it slows things down a bit. Also, so
I was going to say, control does that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Exactly.
You can't just be running around everywhere on the layout and. So now we have signals, we have control points, and during your job, I have it in the back of the job. I have like a short job description, and I'll have like tips, like, hey, if you want to do this, these could help you through switching the job. And then I'll have like kind of instructions, and the instructions are very simple. It's more like follow the signals. If you need to go past this point, make sure you call the dispatcher, get permission to do that, and you'll get the signal. So again, that's also, added some time to the operation.
It takes a while for the dispatcher to do anything because he has to jump down off the yard locomotive, run across to the yard office and run in there and start throwing signals around.
Yeah, but one thing with that, and John hits that great point about control and time. And it doesn't matter, I don't think. I mean, my small layout we were using, whether you use paper with track warrants or you use signals or you use any other method, that control really is how you build time back into your layout and don't let it become the Wild West.
Right. Somebody has to control the flow. You just can't, because if he didn't, when these guys get done with their jobs, they're just going to come right through and right into the yard, whether you're ready for them or not. You know, something you say, whoa. You can only going to go this far for now because I'm not ready to take you in here yet, you know. Because like I said earlier, depending on what train's coming back and where the cars are going, the engine needs to be on the north side or the south side, you know, so I can pull cars off, you know. Yeah. So it's very important that they don't just can't come barnstorming into the yard whenever they want.
In that you mentioned remote dispatching, I know you've also done some remote operations for the guys that can't be there in Sebastian, Florida with you, including a resident that's sitting in the room with me right now. Talk about remote operations and how you make that work on your layout.
Yes, we've done it. We've talked about it. We made it come to life. It's nothing crazy, but I've just added a couple cameras. So the operator who will be, moving trains remotely, Don, could see what's going on. And it's just for the yard job right now. It's basically we have someone you could just use. What was it? Team Viewer? Is that what we were
Team Viewer?
using?
Yep.
Yeah, it's basically just remotely controlling my computer. But on my computer, I have just actually a live feed of the cameras on the screen and a Y throttle through JMRI on the computer. So you're just controlling the train that way, and then you could see what's going on through the cameras. But then we've also added the radios, which is a whole nother dynamic. But we've got the two-way radios where when you talk through the radio here on the layout, it goes through the computer to the headset, who's ever running the train, and then they could talk back to you through the radio.
Right. It's fun to actually control a locomotive remotely because it's not a lot of lag. You know what I mean? It's pretty close to being right on. And the fun part is creeping up. I mean, if you're going to come back like 6, 8, 10 cars to a hitch, you can really ramp up your throttle, and then as you start getting closer to the coupler, you can start, backing it down. And I guess the whole challenge for me is creeping up on that coupler and not pushing the train 3 car lengths past where I want to be, and in the beginning it was tough. I'm like, wow, this is harder than it looks. You would think, you want to hit that emergency stop button, but you don't. You want to use the brake and turn the brake on and off, and because all our locomotives on his line and my line are all set up for braking. Because he has a proto throttle, I have a proto. All our locomotives are set up basically for the proto throttle, even though you can run them off regular cabs.
Yeah, that would be my question. How's the latency on that? I mean, from you hitting the control wherever you are to it actually happening in Sebastian.
It's
not bad.
It's quick. I would say a second or so.
At least.
Once we had to adjust the momentum a little bit because actually it's easier with a lot of momentum because as you're using your mouse on your computer to adjust the throttle, it's kind of easy to, give it too much or give it too less. So then as you're approaching where you want to stop, you could, throttle to idle and then just work the brake. And I mean, I don't know what, Don, like one day we probably spent like 2 hours.
At least.
Like we were resetting the yard we were getting ready for a session and I had to move some stuff around. But there was like an hour plus where Don didn't say anything. And I was just talking to him. I was giving him car counts, whatever. And then we were moving stuff around and it was so cool.
It was cool. But I've never done that before. It's the first time I've ever remotely controlled a locomotive.
You said nothing for an entire hour. That's amazing.
I was concentrating on my brake.
That's almost as amazing as remote operations. That's basically, you know what we're waiting for? We're waiting for somebody with the technical expertise to be able to take a proto throttle and make it USB capable to be able to do some stuff like that with.
That would be
cool.
That would
Not
be,
only we talked about it with Train Simulator, right?
Yeah.
Like it'd be fun to be able to use that as the controller for Train Simulator. When somebody can figure out a way to make a USB interface for that, where you can actually remote operate still with a proto throttle.
I hope those people are listening.
Yeah, there you go. If you're listening, somebody who's got some deep technical expertise, that's what we're really we're looking for that too, because that proto throttle, I've joked many times, needs a Surgeon General's warning on it for addictiveness, because it certainly is. And the more you use it, the more you want to use it on more things. And
that would
play,
be awesome if that could happen. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
So you got remote operations, you've got signals to slow it down. You've got that industry where your coil industry, where you're slowing things down with that. You have a smaller layout. You've got these folks, but you're able to accommodate them. You're able to reciprocate for operating at other folks' layouts. Are you feeling satisfied with what you have there, or is there still that itch for more?
I think I definitely feel satisfied, because if I had more space, I think I would still build almost the same thing, but just maybe more spread out, like I do enjoy that like last mile operation, which I kind of do simulate here. It's not too complicated where, I need 20 operators, I mean, I love those layouts, and me personally, I don't think I travel off of work, and I have limited time to do these things. So I want to be able to have something going and maintain it, keep it going. So yeah, I'm satisfied with the space I have, the size, the type of operation. I'm finally getting to the point now where, like we were talking about, I could have 4 or 5 operators and fill up a few hours of the evening, have a good time, and then shut it down. Few Modelos, shut it down. It's good. I love it. I mean, I think I do want to do maybe, get into a little bit of some dioramas or some small little things just to, satisfy a few other areas of the hobby. But as far as the operations, definitely satisfied with it.
You've got enough projects going on.
I've got enough projects. For every one project I finish, I probably come up with about 5 more.
I've never seen anything like him. He's like not one project. He's got like 5 different projects going on at once.
Well, and then, we talked about, again, going back to our conversation with Tom Klimoski, and building the right size layout is a lot about you and knowing yourself and knowing that you do love to do all those extra projects, that you have a busy lifestyle, that you have a job that keeps you very busy and going places. And I think for that, you really have honed down to building the right size layout for John Farrington.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a beautiful layout. It's well run. It runs great. It's beautiful. The scenery is so realistic. It's perfect. It's just perfect the way it is right now. And he just keeps making it better.
I know you're having a good time up here in New England with your family and friends up here, but you can't wait to get back down to Florida and operate on John's layout and back on your layout and everybody else's. So. Awesome. Well, John, it's been awesome having you here on Talking Ops with Don Irace and hearing all about the Somerset and Raritan. And we'll look forward to your next time on Around the Layout.
Thanks, John. See you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.